I woke up feeling like someone had filled my veins with ice water. My lungs burned with that first gasp of recycled ship air, and the familiar ache of cryo-sleep settled deep into my joints. Frost clung to my eyelashes, melting slowly as I blinked away 12 years of artificial hibernation. The pod seal broke with a hiss, releasing me into the dim blue light of the cryo chamber. I pushed myself up on trembling arms, fighting the weakness that always came after long-term stasis. My body felt wrong somehow, too light, too stiff, like it belonged to someone else. Around me, 5 other pods were opening. Commander Abigail Lawrence was already sitting upright, her short auburn hair plastered to her head with melting frost. She caught my eye and gave a curt nod. Typical Abigail, all business even minutes after regaining consciousness. "Systems check, everyone," she said, her voice raspy from disuse. Eddie Bush groaned from his pod. "Christ, I feel like I've been hit by a truck." He ran his hands through his wavy brown hair, leaving it standing in odd directions. 12 years is too damn long to be a popsicle. "How do you know it's been 12 years?" Timothy asked, carefully testing each of his limbs. The doctor was always methodical, even in his own recovery. I tapped the console beside my pod, bringing up the mission stats. 12 years, 17 days, 4 hours since departure from Earth orbit, I confirmed, scanning the readouts. All vital systems maintained throughout, no anomalies during transit. Emma Thompson was the last to fully emerge from her pod, her long black hair coming loose from its tie as she stretched cautiously. "Anyone else have weird dreams?" she asked, rubbing her arms to warm them. "That's normal," Timothy said, now standing beside his pod. "Brain activity during cryo isn't completely suppressed. We process fragments of thoughts, memories." Jeremy Burgess hadn't spoken yet. The engineer sat hunched at the edge of his pod, staring at his hands. "Jeremy," I called, "you good?" He looked up, blinking rapidly behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Yeah, I'm fine. Just recalibrating." Abigail pushed off from her pod, floating effortlessly in the ship's minimal gravity. "Porter, Bush, with me to the bridge. The rest of you, check your stations and meet us there in 20 minutes. I caught the small pack of rehydration tablets Timothy tossed my way, popping 2 into my mouth. The bitter taste was unpleasant, but necessary. Cryo sleep left everyone dangerously dehydrated. Following Abigail's lead, I pushed off from the floor and glided toward the corridor that led to the bridge. My muscles protested with each movement, but the familiar sensation of zero-G navigation came back quickly. 12 years in stasis, but my body remembered what to do. The bridge doors slid open as we approached. Eddie floated past me, heading straight for the pilot station. "Let's see where we've ended up," he said, his fingers already dancing across the controls. The main viewport flickered to life, revealing our destination. The planet hung before us like a massive marble wrapped in cotton, completely shrouded in thick, swirling clouds. No continents visible, no oceans, just an impenetrable blanket of atmosphere. "Atmospheric composition?" Abigail asked, strapping herself into the commander's chair. I moved to my station, pulling up the sensor readings. Nitrogen-oxygen mix, breathable with filtration. I continued scanning the data, frowning as I noticed something odd. "That's strange." "What is it, Porter?" Abigail asked. "I'm not picking up any electromagnetic activity." I ran the scan again, checking different frequencies. Nothing, not even background radiation. Eddie looked over from his station. "That can't be right. Run it again." I did 3 times. I showed them the readouts. Every planet we've ever studied has some form of natural EM radiation, solar interaction, geological processes, something. But this one's completely silent. Abigail floated over to look at my screen. Could it be the cloud cover? Interference? I shook my head. Our sensors are designed to penetrate atmospheric conditions. We should be picking up something. The absence felt wrong, like walking into a room and finding it too quiet. Every planet had a voice, a unique electromagnetic signature. This one was mute. "Maybe it's a sensor malfunction," Eddie suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "All other sensors are functioning normally," I replied. "Temperature readings, gravitational measurements, atmospheric analysis, all working perfectly. It's just silent." The silence bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Planets aren't silent. They hum with magnetic fields, crackle with lightning storms, pulse with geological activity. This one felt dead, or worse, like it was holding its breath. The bridge doors opened as Timothy, Emma, and Jeremy joined us. Timothy immediately went to the medical station, while Emma moved to the science console. "Initial readings look promising," Emma said, scanning her data. "Atmosphere potentially supports complex life forms. Surface gravity 0.92 of Earth standard." "What about the EM anomaly?" Abigail asked her. Emma frowned. "Porter's right. It's strange. Even dead planets have some electromagnetic signature." Jeremy had drifted to the viewport, staring down at the cloud-covered world. His fingers tapped against the wall in a nervous rhythm. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. I'd seen him do this before when he was anxious, usually before major system tests. "We need to prepare for descent," Abigail announced. "Bush, plot us a trajectory through those clouds. Thompson, finalize your collection protocols. Clark, make sure medical supplies are prepped for potential injuries. Burgess, Porter, run full diagnostics on the lander. I want to know it's 100% before we trust our lives to it." I nodded and pushed off toward the engineering bay, gesturing for Jeremy to follow. He seemed reluctant to leave the viewport, his eyes still fixed on the planet below. "Jeremy," I said, touching his shoulder. "Let's go." He flinched at my touch, then nodded. "Sorry. Yes. Diagnostics." The engineering bay was cold and cramped, filled with equipment that hadn't been touched since our departure from Earth. Jeremy and I worked methodically through the lander's systems: propulsion, life support, communications, navigation. Everything checked out, but Jeremy kept making small mistakes, entering commands incorrectly or missing steps in the protocol. "You sure you're okay?" I asked as he mistyped a command sequence for the third time. "Just cryo lag," he muttered, deleting his error. "My fingers aren't working right." I watched him for a moment. Jeremy was usually meticulous, almost obsessive about procedure. This distraction wasn't like him. "What do you think about the EM readings?" he asked suddenly, not looking up from his console. "I think they're weird," I admitted. "Never seen anything like it." "Maybe we shouldn't go down there." His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "What?" "Nothing." He shook his head. "Forget it." We finished the diagnostics in silence. The lander was in perfect condition, at least mechanically. As we worked, I could hear Eddie and Emma in the adjacent cargo bay, loading equipment and supplies for our surface expedition. "We'll need the core sampler," Emma was saying, "and the portable spectrometer." "Already packed," Eddie replied, "along with enough rations for 2 weeks." I closed the diagnostic program and turned to Jeremy. "All green, the lander's ready." He nodded, but his attention had drifted back to the small viewport in the engineering bay. From this angle, we could only see a sliver of the planet, but Jeremy stared at it like it might suddenly speak to him. His fingers resumed their nervous tapping against the console. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. "Jeremy," I said sharply, "report." He blinked and turned to me. "All systems nominal. The lander's ready for descent." "Good. Let's tell Abigail." We made our way back to the bridge, where Abigail and Timothy were reviewing the mission parameters. Eddie and Emma joined us moments later. "Lander checks out," I reported. "All systems functioning within optimal parameters." "Equipment's loaded and secured," Eddie added. "We're ready when you are, Commander." Abigail nodded. "Good. We'll begin descent preparations at 0800 tomorrow. That gives everyone 12 hours to fully recover from cryosleep and prepare for surface conditions." She looked at each of us in turn. "Get some rest, run your final checks, and be ready. This is what we came 12 light years to do." As the others dispersed to their quarters, I lingered on the bridge, drawn back to my sensor readings. I ran another scan of the planet, searching all frequencies for any sign of electromagnetic activity. Still nothing. Just that unnatural silence. "Something's bothering you," Abigail said, appearing at my shoulder. "The EM readings," I said, "or lack of them. It's not right." "You think it's dangerous?" I hesitated. "I don't know, but it's unprecedented." Abigail considered this. "We've come too far to turn back because of an anomaly, Porter. We need answers, not just more questions." "I know, I gestured at the readouts. Planets have signatures, voices. This one's mute." Then we'll be the first to hear what it has to say, Abigail replied. Her confidence was unwavering, as always. It was why she was in command. I nodded, not entirely reassured. As I left the bridge, I passed Jeremy in the corridor. He was standing motionless, staring out another viewport at the cloud-covered planet. His fingers tapped against the wall, tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 like he was trying to communicate with the silent world below. I woke to the sound of Eddie's voice over the intercom. Final systems check complete. Prepare for descent sequence. I pulled myself from my quarters and made my way to the lander bay where the others were already gathering. The lingering effects of cryo-sleep had mostly faded, replaced by a different kind of tension that settled in my shoulders as I watched Jeremy fidget with the seals on his suit. "Everything good?" I asked him. He nodded too quickly, his eyes darting past me to the view screen showing our destination. "Just want to make sure everything's tight. Don't want any surprises down there." I checked my own suit methodically, the familiar routine calming my nerves. The lack of electromagnetic signals from the planet still bothered me, but we had our orders. 12 years of travel couldn't end with us just turning around because of an anomaly. Abigail approached, her commander's insignia freshly polished on her shoulder. "Everyone ready?" Timothy closed his medical kit with a snap. "As ready as we'll ever be." Emma was the last to join us, her collection tools organized in the extra pockets of her suit. "Sorry, wanted to triple-check my sampling equipment." We filed into the descent vessel, a cramped compartment designed for function rather than comfort. I took my seat between Timothy and Jeremy, securing the 5-point harness across my chest. Eddie was already at the controls, his fingers dancing across the console with practiced ease. "Separation in 30 seconds, Eddie announced, his Irish lilt more pronounced under pressure. "Hold on to your breakfast, folks." The magnetic clamps released with a heavy thunk that vibrated through the hull. I felt the slight push as maneuvering thrusters fired, guiding us away from our mothership. "Beginning atmospheric entry," Eddie said. "First layer of cloud cover in 5, 4, 3, 2. The viewport filled with swirling gray as we plunged into the planet's thick atmosphere. The vessel shuddered around us, metal groaning under the strain of entry. I watched the external temperature readings climb on my wrist display. "Normal turbulence," Eddie assured us as the craft bucked. "Nothing the old girl can't handle." We descended deeper, enveloped completely by clouds that pressed against the viewport like wet cotton. The light dimmed until we were bathed in an eerie twilight broken only by the glow of instrument panels. "Visibility 0, Eddie reported, switching to instrument navigation. I glanced at Abigail, who sat with her back straight, eyes fixed on her console. The consummate commander, never showing worry even when I knew she must feel it. Then I heard it. The spire's in her hand. The voice came through my communication headset, mechanical and flat. I tapped the side of my helmet, thinking I'd misheard. "Did anyone else?" I started. "The spire is in her hand," the voice repeated, cutting me off. Emma leaned forward. "What is that? Some kind of automated message?" I looked to Abigail, who was already working her console, fingers moving rapidly across the touchscreen. "Can't locate the source," she said, frustration edging her voice. "It's not coming from orbit, and there shouldn't be any broadcasting stations on an unexplored planet." "The spire is in her hand," Jeremy's breathing quickened beside me. "Make it stop," he whispered. "Eddie, any way to filter this out?" Abigail asked. "Working on it, Commander," but Eddie never finished his sentence. The ship lurched violently to the left. My body slammed against the restraints, knocking the air from my lungs. "What was that?" Timothy called out. "Some kind of interference," Eddie shouted, wrestling with the controls. "Navigation systems are going haywire." Warning lights flashed across the cabin, bathing us in pulses of red. The descent vessel spun, throwing us against our restraints. I gripped my armrests until my knuckles turned white, fighting the vertigo as the craft tumbled through the atmosphere. "Engines compensating," Eddie yelled over the blaring alarms. I can't stabilize." Through my window, the clouds suddenly parted, revealing glimpses of what lay below, an endless expanse of sand, flat and barren, rushing toward us at terrifying speed. "Brace for impact," Abigail commanded. I tucked my chin against my chest, closed my eyes, and tensed every muscle in my body. The last thing I heard before impact was the mechanical voice, still repeating its message as if nothing was wrong. "The spire is in her hand." Then came the impact, a violent jolt that slammed me forward against my restraints, then back against my seat. Metal tore, glass shattered, something struck my helmet hard enough to crack my visor. The world spun, went black, and I knew nothing more. Pain brought me back. Dull, throbbing pain in my head and a sharp sting across my left cheekbone. I opened my eyes to find my vision partially obscured by a smear of red across my visor. Blood. My blood. I tried to move and felt the restraints still holding me in place. With fumbling fingers, I released the buckle and immediately slumped forward, catching myself on the seat in front of me. "Keith? Keith, can you hear me?" Abigail's voice sounded distant through the ringing in my ears. I turned toward her, the movement sending a fresh wave of pain through my skull. "I'm here," I managed, my voice raspy. "What happened?" "We crashed," she said simply, already moving through the wreckage with purpose. "Need to check on everyone." My eyes traveled to the front of the vessel where Eddie sat, slumped over the controls. Even through my blood-smeared visor, I could see that his neck bent at an impossible angle, his head lolling to one side. The realization hit me with cold certainty. Eddie was dead. I pushed myself up, ignoring the pain, and moved to check on the others. Emma sat clutching her right arm, her face contorted in pain behind her helmet. "Broken," she said through gritted teeth when she saw me looking. "Clean break, I think." Timothy was struggling to stand, favoring his left leg. "Knee's not good," he said, his medical training evident in the clinical assessment of his own injury. "Possible ligament tear, maybe worse." Jeremy had a nasty gash across his forehead, blood trickling down his face inside his helmet. He stared straight ahead, seemingly in shock, but at least he was conscious. "Jeremy?" I touched his shoulder. "You with us?" He blinked slowly, then nodded. "The voice," he whispered. "It's still here." Now that he mentioned it, I realized the mechanical message continued to repeat in our helmets, a monotonous backdrop to our disaster. "The spire is in her hand. The spire is in her hand." Abigail had made her way to the communications panel, which sparked and smoked when she tried to activate it. "Mayday, mayday," she called into her helmet mic. "This is Commander Lawrence. Our vessel has crashed. We have one casualty and multiple injuries. Request immediate extraction." She waited, then repeated the call. "Mayday, mayday. Anyone copy?" Nothing but static answered her, punctuated by that same repeating message. I moved through the wreckage, assessing the damage. The descent vessel was destroyed beyond any hope of repair. The hull had split open in multiple places, the navigation systems were completely fried, and the engine compartment had been crushed on impact. "Communications?" I asked Abigail. She shook her head. "Dead, backup systems too." "Beacon?" Trying to activate it now, but she pressed a series of buttons, then slammed her fist against the console in frustration. Nothing. I checked our emergency supplies. We had enough oxygen, water, and rations for maybe a week if we rationed carefully. Our suits were intact, which was something at least. The planet's atmosphere was technically breathable according to our scans, but we'd planned to use filtration until we could run more detailed tests. "What about the emergency transmitter in the survival kit?" Timothy suggested, wincing as he shifted his weight. I pulled out the handheld device, but my hope died when I saw its cracked casing. When I tried to power it on, nothing happened. "It's dead," I reported. "Must have been damaged in the crash." Abigail stood in the center of the wreckage, taking stock of our situation with a commander's eye. "We need to assess our options. The ship will know something's wrong when we miss our check-in, but without a beacon or transmitter." She didn't need to finish. We all knew what that meant. The ship was in high orbit, conserving fuel. Without a signal to guide them, they'd have no way to find us on a planet this size. "What about the signal?" Emma asked, nodding toward her helmet. "If we can locate its source." "It could be our only chance," Abigail agreed. "If someone or something on this planet is broadcasting, they might have communication equipment we could use." I moved to what remained of the viewport and looked outside for the first time. What I saw made my stomach sink. Endless sand dunes stretched in every direction, rippling like a golden ocean under a flat gray sky. No vegetation, no structures, no signs of life at all. Just sand and more sand, broken only by the furrow our vessel had carved during its crash landing. "There's nothing out there," I said. "There has to be," Abigail insisted. "That signal is coming from somewhere." The voice continued its endless loop in our helmets. The spire is in her hand. I helped Emma fashion a makeshift sling for her arm using supplies from the medical kit, while Timothy instructed me on how to stabilize his knee. Jeremy had gone quiet, staring out at the desert landscape, occasionally mouthing words I couldn't hear. "We need to bury Eddie," Timothy said softly. "We can't just leave him." Abigail shook her head. "We don't have the tools to dig in this sand, and we can't carry him. We need to focus on survival now." It felt wrong, but she was right. We gathered what supplies we could salvage: water, rations, medical equipment, anything that might help us survive. With one last look at Eddie's body, still strapped into the pilot's seat, we stepped out of the wreckage and into the alien desert. The heat hit me immediately. My suit's cooling system kicked in, but I could still feel sweat beating on my forehead. The thermometer on my wrist display read 45 degrees Celsius, and it wasn't even midday yet. "The signal seems stronger in that direction," Abigail said, pointing toward a range of low dunes to the east. "That's where we head." With Timothy limping between Emma and me, and Jeremy following behind, we began our trek across the endless sand, the mechanical voice our constant companion. "The spire is in her hand. The spire is in her hand. The spire is in her hand." I helped Abigail up from where she'd been kneeling next to Eddie's body. There was nothing more we could do for him. His neck had snapped on impact, death likely instantaneous. Small mercy, I supposed. "We need to move," Abigail said, her voice steady despite everything. "The signal is our only chance of finding help or getting back to the ship." I nodded. "You're right. We can't stay here." No one argued with her plan. What choice did we have? Our descent vessel was beyond repair, communications dead, and our emergency beacon destroyed in the crash. Without help, we'd die here, just like Eddie. Timothy sat on a broken section of hull, grimacing as he tried to straighten his injured leg. The knee had swollen to twice its normal size. "Let me help you with that," I said, kneeling beside him. "Thanks, Keith." Timothy's face was pale with pain. "There's a medical kit in my pack. We'll need to immobilize it." I retrieved the kit and followed his instructions, using 2 metal rods from the wreckage and strips of fabric torn from a spare thermal blanket. Timothy guided me through creating a makeshift splint, his doctor's training evident even as he winced through the process. "Not bad," he said when we finished. "Should hold until we find whatever we're looking for." Across the cabin, Emma was struggling one-handed with her own medical supplies. Her broken arm hung awkwardly at her side. "Emma, let me finish with Timothy, then I'll help you," I called. "I've got it," she insisted, though her face was tight with pain. I watched as she fashioned a sling from a compression bandage, looping it around her neck and securing her arm against her chest. Her resourcefulness impressed me. Jeremy stood apart from us, staring out through the shattered viewport. He hadn't spoken since regaining consciousness, just kept tapping his fingers against his thigh in an irregular pattern. The gash on his forehead had stopped bleeding, but dried blood still caked his hairline. "Jeremy?" I approached him cautiously. "You okay?" He turned slowly. "The spire's in her hand," he whispered, repeating the mechanical phrase that still echoed through our helmet comms. "Yeah, we all hear it," I said. "We're going to find where it's coming from." He nodded, but his eyes seemed unfocused. Abigail organized us efficiently, despite our injuries. We gathered everything useful from the wreckage: water packs, ration bars, medical supplies, portable oxygen tanks as backup. Our suits would filter the atmosphere, but having reserves was essential. "What about Eddie?" Emma asked quietly. Abigail looked back at his body, still strapped in the pilot's seat. "We can't carry him, not with our injuries and limited supplies." "We should at least," Timothy began. "Cover him," Abigail finished. "Yes." I found a thermal blanket that hadn't been shredded for Timothy's splint and carefully draped it over Eddie's body. It felt wrong to leave him, but Abigail was right. Survival had to come first. We exited through the emergency hatch. The alien landscape hit me immediately. A vast desert stretching in all directions, broken only by distant dunes that shimmered in the heat. The sky was a strange amber color, the planet's sun beating down mercilessly. My suit's external thermometer read 45 degrees Celsius. Even with our cooling systems working, I felt sweat beading on my forehead. "The signal's strongest in that direction," Abigail said, pointing toward a line of dunes to the east. That's where we head." We moved in single file. Abigail led, followed by Jeremy, then Emma. I helped Timothy, supporting his weight as he hobbled along with his splinted leg. The sand shifted beneath our boots, making each step a struggle. The mechanical voice continued its endless loop. "The spire is in her hand. The spire is in her hand." Hours passed. The landscape barely changed, just endless sand and occasional rock formations weathered by time and wind. My shoulders ached from supporting Timothy, but I didn't complain. His pain was far worse than my discomfort. Jeremy walked ahead with unusual energy, constantly adjusting his helmet receiver as if trying to better capture the signal. I noticed him mumbling to himself, his lips moving in sync with the mechanical voice. "Let's take a break," Abigail finally called. We'd been walking for nearly 4 hours according to my suit's chronometer. We found a small outcropping of rocks that provided minimal shade. Timothy sank down gratefully, extending his injured leg with a groan. Emma sat beside him, cradling her arm. I distributed water packs and ration bars. "Jeremy, you need to eat," I said, holding out his portion. He took the ration bar, but just held it, staring at the horizon. "It's getting stronger," he said. "The signal?" Abigail asked. He nodded. "Clearer too. Can't you hear it?" I listened. The message hadn't changed. "The spire is in her hand." Same mechanical voice, same 5 words on endless repeat. "We all hear it, Jeremy," Timothy said gently. "Try to eat something." Jeremy set the untouched ration bar on a rock and walked a few paces away, staring in the direction we were heading. "He's in shock," Timothy whispered to me. "Keep an eye on him." We rested for 30 minutes, then continued our trek. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sand. Abigail called a halt when visibility became too poor to continue safely. We made camp in the open desert, huddling together for warmth as the temperature plummeted. The day's scorching heat gave way to bitter cold, a drop of nearly 30 degrees. We took turns sleeping, though the constant mechanical voice made true rest impossible. By morning, Timothy's condition had worsened. His knee had swollen further, and he developed a fever during the night. Emma looked pale, the pain of her broken arm clearly taking its toll. Only Jeremy seemed energized, pacing impatiently as we prepared to move out. The second day of walking was harder than the first. Timothy could barely support his own weight, and I found myself practically carrying him. Every few steps he would groan despite his obvious attempts to remain stoic. "I can manage," he insisted when I suggested we stop for a rest. "You're a terrible liar, Doc," I told him. Around midday, he collapsed. His leg simply gave out, and he fell hard to the sand. I knelt beside him, helping him sit up. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "Just need a minute." "Take all the time you need," I said, though we all knew time was something we didn't have. Our water supplies were already half depleted. Emma's condition wasn't much better. Her face had grown increasingly pale, and she winced with every step as the movement jostled her broken arm. Still, she didn't complain, just pressed forward with quiet determination. Jeremy, on the other hand, seemed almost manic. He walked ahead of the group, sometimes so far that Abigail had to call him back. The signal clearly affected him differently than the rest of us. While we found it annoying and unsettling, he seemed drawn to it, energized by it. When we made camp that night, I noticed Jeremy sitting apart from us, drawing patterns in the sand with his finger. I walked over to see what he was doing and felt a chill run through me. Over and over, he had written the words, "The spire is in her hand." "Jeremy," I said quietly, "come join us. You need to eat." He didn't look up, just continued tracing the words in the sand. His finger moved methodically, almost robotically. "Jeremy," I tried again, placing my hand on his shoulder. His reaction was instant and alarming. He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, his fingers digging in painfully. His eyes, when they met mine, were wide and feverish. "Can't you feel it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's calling us." I tried to pull away, but his grip only tightened. "Jeremy, you're hurting me." "The signal," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "It's not a warning, it's an invitation." "An invitation to what?" I asked, trying to keep him talking while I worked my arm free. His eyes seemed to focus suddenly, looking directly into mine with an intensity that made me want to step back. "Transcendence," he whispered. "She's waiting for us." "Who is?" Instead of answering, He finally released my wrist and turned back to his writing in the sand. I retreated to where Abigail sat with Timothy and Emma. "Something's wrong with him," I said quietly, rubbing my wrist where Jeremy's fingers had left red marks. Abigail nodded. "I know, but we need to keep moving. The signal's getting stronger. Whatever's broadcasting it can't be too much farther." "And if what we find doesn't help us?" Emma asked, voicing the fear we all shared. "One problem at a time," Abigail replied. "For now, we rest. Tomorrow might be the day we find answers." I took first watch that night, sitting with my back against a small rock formation. The others slept fitfully around me, except for Jeremy. He remained separate, still tracing those same 5 words in the sand over and over as the mechanical voice continued its endless broadcast through our helmets. "The spire is in her hand. The spire is in her hand. The spire is in her hand." I spotted a dark line rising from the sand on the 3rd day of our journey. At first, I thought it might be a mirage, another cruel trick of this alien desert. The mechanical voice had been our constant companion, its message about the spire repeating endlessly in our helmets. We'd been walking for what felt like forever, our supplies dwindling faster than expected. "Look," I said, pointing toward the horizon. "There's something there." The rest of the crew followed my gaze. We'd been walking in silence for hours, each of us lost in our own thoughts, fighting exhaustion and the growing sense of despair that had settled over us since the crash. Abigail squinted against the harsh light. "That's gotta be it, the source of the signal." As we got closer, the dark line grew taller, more defined. I realized what we were looking at, a massive black spire reaching up from the desert floor like a finger pointing accusingly at the sky. It had to be at least 300 meters tall, its surface not smooth, but covered in what looked like ancient symbols or writing, etched deep into whatever material it was made from. "The spire's in her hand," Jeremy whispered, his voice suddenly clear after hours of muttering. His eyes were wide, fixed on the structure ahead. Timothy leaned heavily against me, his injured leg barely supporting his weight anymore. The infection had gotten worse overnight, and his face was pale and drawn with pain. Emma walked a few paces ahead, her broken arm held tight against her chest in its makeshift sling. "We need to rest," I told Abigail, nodding toward Timothy. "He can't keep going at this pace." She nodded, her expression grim. "We'll take 5 minutes, but we need to reach that structure before nightfall." I helped Timothy sit down on a flat rock, and he let out a groan of relief as he took his weight off his injured leg. Thanks," he said, his voice weak. "This isn't looking good, is it?" Before I could answer, Jeremy let out a strange laugh, high-pitched and unnatural. He was staring at the spire with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. "It's calling me," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Can't you hear it? The real message." Then, without warning, he started running toward the spire, his movements jerky but surprisingly fast. "Jeremy, stop!" Abigail shouted, her commander voice cutting through the air. "That's an order!" But Jeremy didn't slow down. If anything, he ran faster, laughing as he went, the sound echoing strangely in our helmet comms. "What's happening to him?" Emma asked, her voice tight with fear. "The signal," Timothy said weakly. "I think it's affecting his mind somehow. The constant repetition, the stress of the crash. It might have triggered a psychotic break." Abigail cursed under her breath. "I'm going after him. You 3 stay here." "You shouldn't go alone," I said, but I was torn. Timothy couldn't walk without help, and I didn't want to leave him stranded. "I'll be fine," she assured me. "Just keep an eye on Timothy." As Abigail headed toward Jeremy, Emma moved closer to the spire, pulling out what remained of our radio transmitter. "What are you doing?" I asked her. "If that spire is broadcasting the signal, maybe I can use it to boost our own transmission," she explained, fiddling with the equipment. "It's worth a try. The mothership might still be in orbit." I nodded, watching as she worked. Meanwhile, Abigail had nearly reached Jeremy, who stood at the base of the spire, running his hands over the strange symbols carved into its surface. "Jeremy," I heard Abigail say through the comm, her tone softer now, reasonable. "We need to stick together. Come back to the group so we can figure this out." Jeremy turned to look at her, and even from this distance I could see something was very wrong with his expression. His face was twisted into a grimace that might have been trying to be a smile. "Don't you understand?" he said, his voice distorted. "The spire is the answer. It's been calling us, calling me. "I know you think that," Abigail said carefully, "but we need to approach this methodically, as a team." While they talked, Emma continued working with the radio equipment, her movements becoming more excited. "I think I'm getting something," she called out. "There's definitely a power source in that structure. If I can just—" I never saw Jeremy move. One moment he was talking to Abigail, the next that he was running toward Emma with a large rock in his hand. Before any of us could react, he brought it down hard on the radio transmitter, smashing it to pieces. "No," Emma cried, jumping back. "What are you doing? That was our only chance." Jeremy didn't answer. He stood there, breathing hard, the rock still clutched in his hand. Then, with a movement so quick I barely registered it, he swung around and struck Abigail across the head with the rock. The sound of the impact was sickening, a dull thud followed by the crack of her helmet visor. She crumpled to the ground without a sound, landing face first in the sand. Blood began to pool beneath her helmet, staining the alien soil dark red. "Abigail!" I shouted, my body moving before my brain could catch up. I lunged forward, leaving Timothy propped against the rock. Jeremy turned to face me, his eyes wild and unfocused. "She was trying to stop us," he said, his voice eerily calm. "She didn't understand. None of you understand." I tackled him, expecting him to go down easily. Jeremy had never been particularly strong or athletic, but he caught me with surprising force, his hands gripping my suit with unnatural strength. We fell to the sand, rolling and struggling for control. "Jeremy, stop this!" I yelled, trying to pin his arms. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing's wrong with me," he hissed. "For the first time, everything is clear. The spire is calling us home." He flipped me onto my back with strength I wouldn't have believed possible and straddled my chest. His hands found my throat, pressing down on my helmet seal with alarming precision. "The air here is pure," he whispered, his face inches from mine. "We don't need these suits. We don't need the ship. We just need to listen." My vision started to blur as he pressed harder, the seal of my helmet digging painfully into my neck. I clawed at his arms, trying to break his grip, but he was like a man possessed. Through my dimming sight, I saw Emma trying to pull him off me, but he shoved her away with one hand, not even looking at her. My hand scrabbled in the sand, searching for anything I could use. My fingers brushed against something sharp, a piece of the destroyed radio transmitter. I grabbed it, feeling its jagged edge cut into my glove, and with all the strength I had left, I drove it into Jeremy's side between the plates of his suit. He made a strange gurgling sound and his grip loosened. I pushed him off me and scrambled away, gasping for breath. Jeremy looked down at the metal shard protruding from his side with an expression of mild surprise. Then, with deliberate movements, he pulled it out. Blood spurted from the wound, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He took 3 stumbling steps toward the spire, his arms outstretched as if in welcome, before his legs gave way and he collapsed face first onto the sand. I lay there for a moment, trying to catch my breath, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I remembered Abigail. I crawled over to where she lay motionless on the ground. With shaking hands, I turned her over, hoping against hope that she was just unconscious. But as soon as I saw her face through the cracked visor, I knew. The rock had crushed part of her skull, and her eyes stared sightlessly at the alien sky. Commander Abigail Lawrence was dead. I sat back on my heels, a wave of nausea washing over me. 2 more of our crew gone in the span of minutes. Jeremy lay a few meters away, not moving, the sand around him turning dark with his blood. "Keith?" Timothy called weakly from where I'd left him. "What happened? Is everyone okay?" I looked up at him, then at Emma, who stood frozen near the remains of the radio transmitter, her face white with shock behind her helmet visor. "No," I said, my voice hollow. "No, we're not okay at all." I heard Timothy calling out. His voice was weak, barely carrying over the mechanical drone that had become our constant companion. "Keith, Keith." I turned from Jeremy's body and hurried across the sand toward Timothy. He'd been getting worse by the hour, but nothing prepared me for what I saw. He'd pulled up the leg of his suit, revealing the wound beneath. Black veins spread outward from the injury site, creating a web-like pattern against his dark skin. The infection had taken hold with frightening speed. "How bad is it?" I asked, kneeling beside him. Timothy gave me a look I recognized immediately, the same one I'd seen him give terminal patients during our training. "Bad enough. The suit breach must have let in something nasty." He winced as he shifted position. "This isn't a normal infection. Too fast, too aggressive." I reached for the medical kit, but Timothy shook his head. Save it. We both know what's happening. I'm dying, Keith. His voice was calm, clinical. But I need you to listen. You need to keep going to that spire. Make sense of all this, all these deaths. He gripped my arm with surprising strength. Something brought us here. Something killed Eddie, Abigail, and now me. Jeremy too, in a way. Find out what it is. Emma approached, her face pale behind her visor. We can't just leave him. You're not leaving me, Timothy said. I'm coming with you. One last walk. Between the two of us, Emma and I managed to get Timothy to his feet. He leaned heavily against me, his breathing labored. Emma supported his other side despite her broken arm. We moved slowly, following the base of the massive spire that loomed above us. The signal's getting stronger, Emma said. Timothy nodded. It's been in our heads for days now. The spire is in her hand, over and over. We continued our painful progress around the base of the structure. The black surface was smooth, yet somehow textured, covered in symbols I couldn't begin to understand. As we rounded the curve, I stopped dead in my tracks. Oh my God! Before us lay a colossal figure, partially buried in the sand. It was humanoid, but clearly not human. Purple skin stretched over a frame that must have been 50 meters tall. Its elongated head was cracked open like a broken egg, revealing a cavity where a pulsing blue light emanated in rhythmic waves. One massive hand extended upward from the sand, fingers curled around the base of the spire. Emma gasped beside me. Timothy's weight sagged against me as he stared up at the alien corpse. It's been dead for centuries, maybe millennia, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Timothy coughed, a wet sound that worried me. The signal, it's not a summons. It's a warning. A warning? Think about it, Timothy said, his voice growing weaker. An automated broadcast, triggered by our approach, not inviting us, warning us away. The blue light pulsed from the creature's shattered skull, matching the rhythm of the voice in our helmets. With each pulse, the mechanical voice repeated its message. The spire is in her hand. Timothy's legs gave out, and I eased him down onto the sand. He stared up at the alien figure, his eyes growing distant. Too late for us, but maybe not for others. I took his hand, feeling the tremors running through it. Save your strength. He shook his head slightly. No point. Just make it mean something, Keith. All of this. Make it... His voice trailed off and his hand went limp in mine. I sat there holding Timothy's hand for several minutes, watching as the light left his eyes. Another friend gone. Another life lost to this alien desert. When I finally looked up, I noticed Emma had gone strangely quiet. She stood perfectly still, staring at the alien corpse, particularly at the pulsing blue light. Emma, she didn't respond. The mechanical voice continued its endless loop. The spire's in her hand. The spire's in her hand. Something clicked in my mind as I looked from the message to the alien figure. Not her hand. Its hand. A simple translation error in an ancient warning system. Emma? I called again, standing up. She had begun walking toward the alien's outstretched hand, moving with purpose but saying nothing. Her steps were steady, almost mechanical. Emma, what are you doing? I shouted, alarm growing inside me. She didn't turn or acknowledge me. She continued forward as if in a trance, drawn to the massive purple fingers that cradled the base of the spire. Emma, stop! I called after her, breaking into a run. Emma! But she kept walking, the blue light pulsing, the message repeating, as she approached the dead alien's hand. I watched Emma climbing the alien's massive fingers toward the spire. Her movements were stiff but determined, like she was fighting against her own body. The blue light pulsed from the alien corpse, washing over her suit in rhythmic waves. She didn't respond, continuing her climb up the curved digits that rose from the sand like ancient monuments. Each finger was the size of a small car, the purple skin cracked and weathered by centuries of exposure. I glanced back at Timothy's body, still and peaceful against the sand, then at Abigail and Jeremy, lying where they had fallen. I couldn't lose Emma too. Not like this. I scrambled after her, my boots slipping on the alien's skin as I followed her path. The texture beneath my gloves felt like hardened leather stretched over stone, with deep grooves that might have once been fingerprints. The mechanical voice in my helmet continued its endless loop, the words blending together until they became meaningless noise. Emma had reached the palm now, making her way toward where the massive hand connected to the spire. The blue light pulsed more rapidly as she approached. "Emma!" I called again, louder this time. "Listen to me! It's not safe!" I caught up to her at the center of the palm, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. She whirled around, her eyes wide and unfocused behind her visor. "Let go of me!" she shouted, yanking her arm away with surprising strength. "Can't you see? It's calling us. It has the answers." "It's not calling us," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's a warning, Emma. Timothy figured it out before he died. This isn't salvation. It's a trap." "No." She pushed against me with both arms, including her broken one. She didn't even wince at what must have been excruciating pain. "You're wrong. I need to reach it." I grabbed her shoulders, trying to hold her steady. "Emma, please, you're not thinking clearly. The signal is affecting your mind." She fought against me wildly, kicking and thrashing. Her elbow caught me in the chest, knocking me back a step. In that moment, she twisted away from me and lunged toward the edge of the palm. "Emma, wait!" Her foot caught on an uneven ridge in the alien skin. I saw her stumble, arms pinwheeling as she lost her balance. Time seemed to stretch as she teetered on the edge, her good arm reaching out. I lunged forward, my hand extending toward hers. Our fingertips brushed for the briefest moment before she tipped backward, falling away from me. "No!" I shouted, watching helplessly as she plummeted toward the sand below. The impact was sickening. Emma landed awkwardly, her body crumpling on the desert floor. I stood frozen for a moment, hoping against hope to see movement. There was none. I climbed down as quickly as I could, half sliding down the curved fingers until I reached the sand. I ran to where Emma lay motionless, her limbs bent at unnatural angles. I knelt beside her and gently turned her over. Her head lolled to the side at an impossible angle, her neck clearly broken. Through her visor, I could see her eyes, open, empty, and still reflecting the blue pulse from above. "Emma," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. I closed my eyes, fighting back a wave of nausea and grief. I was alone now, completely alone. Eddie, crushed in the crash. Abigail, her skull caved in by Jeremy's rock. Jeremy, bleeding out in the sand from the wound I'd inflicted. Timothy, claimed by infection. And now Emma, broken at the foot of this alien monument. The mechanical voice in my helmet changed. No longer words, just sound. A pulsing, drilling noise that matched the rhythm of the blue light. It bored into my skull, making it hard to think clearly. I looked up at the spire, at the dead alien figure partially buried in the sand. The blue light pulsed from its cracked skull, beckoning, promising answers or salvation or escape. But there was none. I understood now. This wasn't a beacon. It wasn't a distress call. It was a trap, a lure designed to draw visitors to this desolate place. The signal drove them mad like Jeremy, or led them to their deaths like Emma. Perhaps the aliens who built this place had intended it as a warning, but over time, it had become a death sentence. I thought about my crewmates, about Eddie's easy laugh during training, about Abigail's steady leadership, about Timothy's careful hands treating minor injuries during our preparation, about Jeremy's enthusiasm for the mission, about Emma's endless curiosity. All gone now. The spire wasn't our salvation. It was a grave marker, a warning left by a dead civilization, perhaps to prevent others from meeting the same fate. But instead, it ensured exactly that. I looked at my suit's oxygen levels, low but not critical. My water supply would run out first. 2 days, maybe 3 if I rationed carefully. The mothership was days away across the desert, and without the transmitter Jeremy had destroyed, I had no way to call for help. Dehydration would claim me eventually, or perhaps the signal would drive me mad first, and I would tear off my helmet and let the alien atmosphere finish what the spire had started. I walked back to the alien hand and climbed up once more, making my way to the center of its palm. I sat down, feeling the ancient texture through my gloves. The surface was cool despite the blistering heat of the day. The blue light pulsed overhead, casting strange shadows across the curved surface. I ran my fingers along the ridges and whorls of the alien skin. Up close, I could see microscopic patterns etched into the surface, not random cracks from age and weathering, but deliberate designs. They reminded me of circuit boards or the branching patterns of neurons. The signal continued to pound in my helmet, no longer trying to communicate, but simply to overwhelm. I adjusted the volume on my comm system, but it made little difference. The sound wasn't coming through the speakers anymore. It was directly in my head. From this vantage point, I could see the entire crash site in the distance, our descent vessel broken and useless. Beyond it stretched the endless desert we had crossed, its orange-red sands now darkening as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. I thought about removing my helmet just to stop the noise. The atmosphere was technically breathable, according to our initial scans, though the high concentration of particulates would eventually damage human lungs. It would be a relief to escape the drilling sound, even if only for a while. But I wasn't ready to die. Not yet. There were still questions to answer, observations to make. If I was the last human who would ever see this place, I owed it to my crew, to humanity, to understand as much as I could before the end. I looked more closely at the alien corpse. Its proportions were roughly humanoid, but with elongated limbs and a torso that seemed too narrow for its height. The purple skin had the texture of petrified wood, suggesting it had undergone some preservation process either before or after death. The head was the most striking feature, nearly twice the size of a human's, with that significant crack exposing the source of the blue light. It wasn't a skull as I'd first thought, but something more like a casing for whatever technology continued to pulse inside. I wondered how long it had been here. Centuries? Millennia? Long enough for sand to partially bury it, for its skin to crack and harden, yet the signal continued unabated. What kind of power source could last that long? The mechanical drone shifted slightly in pitch, becoming almost musical for a moment before returning to its maddening rhythm. I pressed my hands against my helmet, a futile gesture that did nothing to block the sound. My thoughts turned to Earth, to the people who had sent us here. They would never know what happened. When we failed to report back, they might send another mission decades from now. Would those explorers meet the same fate? Would they find our bodies preserved in the dry desert air? A warning they too would fail to heed. I looked down at my hands. The gloves of my suit were worn from our journey across the desert, small tears showing the inner lining. My oxygen would last another day, maybe two. My water, less than that. The medical supplies were nearly gone, used to treat Timothy's infection and Emma's broken arm. There was no way out, no rescue coming, no miraculous solution waiting to be discovered. I was going to die here, on this alien world, beside this ancient sentinel, the last of my crew, the furthest human from Earth ever. The realization should have terrified me, but instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. There was a certain clarity in accepting the inevitable. My training had always emphasized problem-solving, finding solutions, surviving at all costs, but some situations had no solution. I shifted my position on the alien palm, leaning back against one of the massive fingers. The texture of it was almost comfortable, like sitting against weathered stone. The blue light pulsed above me, and for a moment, I imagined it was watching me, this last visitor to its eternal vigil. The sun continued its descent, casting long shadows across the desert floor. Soon it would be night, and I would see the stars of this alien sky. I wondered if Earth's sun would be visible from here, a distant point of light that represented everything I had left behind. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythm of the signal wash over me. There was nothing more to do now but wait. I removed my helmet, allowing the alien atmosphere to flood my lungs. The air burned like fire as it rushed into my throat, searing a path down to my chest. Each shallow breath felt like inhaling glass shards, but I could breathe it, barely. The constant mechanical signal that had haunted us for days finally stopped, replaced by the soft whisper of desert wind across the sand. With my helmet beside me, I tilted my head back and gazed at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. They emerged one by one, unfamiliar constellations taking shape above me. I wondered if Earth's sun was visible from here, just another pinpoint of light among thousands. Was it that faint star near the horizon? Or perhaps it wasn't visible at all from this angle of the galaxy. My oxygen gauge had been flashing red for hours. The decision to remove my helmet wasn't really a choice, but an acceptance of what was coming. I estimated I would survive perhaps another day or two in this atmosphere. Just enough time to watch the twin moons rise, see the desert claim my crewmates' bodies, and witness humanity's farthest and most futile reach. Despite everything, I felt strangely calm. The panic that had gripped me when Emma fell, when I realized I was completely alone, had faded into a quiet resignation. I had solved the mystery, even if no one would ever know. The signal wasn't a call for help or a welcome. It was a warning, or perhaps a trap. The massive alien corpse, with its cracked skull still pulsing with that eerie blue light, had been here for what must have been millennia. Its technology outlasted its flesh, broadcasting that message long after its civilization had vanished. The sky darkened further, and the temperature began to drop rapidly. The alien desert's colors shifted under the setting sun, deep reds and purples replacing the harsh yellows and whites of day. There was an eerie beauty to this desolate place, the kind you only appreciate when you know you'll never leave it. I looked down at the sand far below, where the bodies of my crewmates lay scattered. Timothy, who died in my arms, his infection spreading too quickly to stop. Abigail, her skull crushed by Jeremy's rock. Jeremy himself, bleeding out from the wound I gave him as he succumbed to the signal's influence. And Emma, her neck broken from the fall, her eyes empty as she stared up at the alien sky. We had come so far, 12 years in cryosleep crossing the void between stars, only to die within days of arrival. The mission briefings never prepared us for this. They spoke of potential discoveries, scientific breakthroughs, the possibility of finding microbial life, not ancient dead civilizations with technology that could still reach into our minds. I coughed, my lungs struggling with the thin, caustic air. My throat felt raw, but I was past caring about the discomfort. The first of the twin moons began to rise on the horizon, larger than Earth's moon, with a pale blue tint that cast an otherworldly glow across the landscape. I took out my personal recorder from the pocket of my suit. The small device was standard issue, meant for personal logs and observations that might not make it into the official mission reports. I turned it over in my hands, considering. No one would likely ever hear what I recorded, but it gave me something to do, a purpose in these final hours. I pressed the button and began speaking, my voice rough from the alien air. This is Keith Porter, mission specialist of the Pathfinder expedition to Kepler 442b. The date is, well, I'm not sure it matters anymore. This will serve as the final record of our mission. I paused, gathering my thoughts. We arrived in orbit approximately 5 days ago. Initial scans showed a breathable atmosphere, but no electromagnetic activity on the surface. We detected a signal during our descent, a repeating message that said, "The spire is in her hand." Our systems failed during entry, causing us to crash. Eddie Bush died on impact. I continued methodically, documenting everything. Our trek across the desert, Timothy's worsening condition, Jeremy's deteriorating mental state, the discovery of the alien corpse, Abigail's death, Timothy's final moments, and Emma's fall. The signal appears to have been a warning, not a call for help. The alien technology continues to function despite the death of its creator. I believe the message was mistranslated. It should have been its hand, not her hand. The spire the alien holds seems to be some kind of transmitter, possibly designed to warn others away from this place. My voice grew weaker as I spoke, the effort of talking in this atmosphere taking its toll. The second moon was rising now, smaller than the first but with the same blue glow. Together, they cast enough light to see the desert stretching out in all directions, empty, lifeless, ancient. I don't know what happened to the civilization that built this, whether they died from some catastrophe or simply abandoned this world, but they left behind technology that outlasted them by what must be thousands of years. Technology that led to our deaths. I stopped the recording for a moment, watching as the wind picked up, sending swirls of sand dancing across the desert floor. Even in this alien place, the laws of physics remained constant. Gravity, thermodynamics, the inevitable march toward entropy. The universe didn't care that we were here, didn't notice our passing. I resumed recording. Our ship remains in orbit. Eventually, after failing to receive communications, it will follow protocol and begin its long journey back to Earth. Empty. 12 years from now, they'll know something went wrong, but they won't know what. Perhaps they'll send another mission. If so, I hope they're more careful than we were. The cold was becoming uncomfortable now. Without my helmet, the temperature regulation of my suit was compromised. I shivered, my teeth chattering slightly as I continued. To anyone who might find this, the signal is dangerous. It affects human minds, creates obsession, paranoia. Stay away from the spire. Stay away from this place. I stopped recording and set the device down beside me. The effort of speaking had left me exhausted. My head felt light, either from the alien atmosphere or from dehydration, probably both. I hadn't had water since before Emma fell. The desert stretched out before me, silent and indifferent. In the moonlight, I could see the bodies of my crewmates, small dark shapes against the pale sand. Soon I would join them. Soon the wind would cover us all, erasing any evidence that humans had ever set foot on this world. I closed my eyes, feeling the cool night air on my face. I was the last human on a world of ancient dead. The thought should have terrified me, but instead, I felt only a profound weariness. We had come seeking knowledge, hoping to expand humanity's understanding of the universe. Instead, we had found only death. The twin moons continued their slow arc across the alien sky, casting their blue light over the desert. I sat there, breathing the burning air, listening to the wind, waiting for the end.